Hi, and welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Mark McNulty. I'm president of Action Coach Bluegrass in Southern Indiana. Today I have Shawn Herbig, president and founder of IQS Research, as my guest. Today we're going to be talking to Shawn about his business, his journey to business ownership, challenges, best practices, and share a peek into what it's really like to build and operate a business. Now, if this is your first time on our channel, be sure to like and subscribe to get notifications when we drop new conversations just like this one. So Shawn, welcome and thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners and give us a brief overview about IQS Research and how you got started and what you do.
Yeah, thanks. I'd be glad to. So IQS Research is kind of as the name would imply, we're a research and data analytics firm. We've been around for about 25 years. What we really do is we work with mid-market companies and organizations, right? So mid-market, if you're not really familiar with the definition, might be revenue from maybe 50 or 75 million on the floor up to about maybe $500 million on the top end. And then also their nonprofit equivalents, right? So that might be maybe like a regional nonprofit or maybe a multi-state nonprofit or even like a government agency or an entity like that. And what we do for those organizations is we tend to work in three areas, right? So we do research around human capital analytics, which is really finding out what your internal people are thinking, right? So they can be engagement or culture studies, things like that. We do a lot of strategic research. Usually that's for for-profit companies, right? And they're already successful, but they're trying to grow or develop, or they got a new product or a new system or a new whatever, right? So they want some insights or some clarity. And then similarly, for our government and our nonprofit clients, we do a lot of what we call public policy research. So you might think about what's the best use for a park, or how do we optimize food delivery at a food pantry, things like that. So it's a lot of sort of very technical research, but it's all based on opinions. It's all based on what people think and helping our clients optimize their situation to really meet their clients' needs the best way they can.
Okay, awesome. So a lot of times people, when they think about business research, they're thinking like market research around products. Is that part of what you do or is that different?
You know, it's interesting because if you think about the profession, that is probably 90% of what the profession does, and it's about 10% of what IQS research does. Occasionally, we'll get in and we'll look at new products, or maybe we'll look at packaging or a commercial or things like that, but it's not the norm. We tend to really get involved in the nitty-gritty if it doesn't have a strategic element to it, right? And with the phrase I use all the time, if our clients aren't making a multi-million-dollar bet on the question they're asking us about, we're probably not going to have a play on that. So we tend not to get involved in the marketing, the advertising, things like that. Others, some of our competitors would, but that tends not to be the space for IQS research.
Okay. You talked about kind of like strategic analysis. Give our listeners maybe an example or two of the type of work you're
Yeah.
doing there.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a couple that are fairly recent. So we've got a client that was in the pharmaceutical space, right? So they're custom compounding these weight loss drugs, and they're selling not to individual consumers, but they're typically selling in conjunction with the doctors, right? So they're maybe doing these weight loss clinics or these whatever, right? So these medically supervised weight loss programs. And there's a lot of sort of challenges with this, and you've got multiple competitors out there, and there are ethical components that sort of come in terms of where you source and where you buy and how all of these things are delivered. And this is a very fast, that company, our client company, was a very fast growing company. So they're going, look, we want to be very ethical. We want to do the right thing. And we also want to be really successful in business. And we're having a little bit of trouble sort of understanding all the pieces and how that can come together to sort of create a pathway that is both profitable and ethical. So what does that look like, right? So who are the ethical doctors out there? What are they looking for? So we put together a really comprehensive study targeting the opinions of these weight loss doctors and these clinic doctors, and these sort of concierge medicine doctors, which is kind of a niche group to go after, right? But when we were going after those people, we wanted to understand, who are you buying from? Why do you use them? What are the key factors you're looking for when you're making a decision? How do you rank these various competitors in the market? Who's really doing well, et cetera, et cetera. When it was all said and done, we were able to sit back down with our client and say, look, this is what they want. This is who they think of first. This is where you rank on that list. These types of people, your top three, these types of people, your bottom three, right? And so once they started to understand that, they said, well, now that I know that, I can really optimize this. I didn't know that that was that important to them. So no, that's super important to these guys. Oh, well, we can build that up. We're already doing it. We can talk about it more. Right. So it really helped them align, not so much to change. I mean, they were still a compounding pharmacy, right? but it's how do they interact with their clients differently to really hit those key trigger points for their clients, which in this case happen to be doctors. So that's an example. We've done a similar thing. We're working with a food pantry right now, and their question is not just how do you get food out? They know how to do that, right? They know how to get the food to the places that it needs to be, but what food are people looking for? If people have diabetes, are they looking for low sugar diets, or do they not care about that? If they have heart disease, do they care about low salt, or do they not care about low salt? Little things that you start to think about in terms of the system of delivering food. Like if you're within a mile of a food pantry, I think you and I, Mark, would probably go, gosh, that's pretty close. But if you don't have a car and you're going to the food pantry on a bicycle and they give you a 20-pound box of canned goods, getting that 20-pound box of canned goods home on your bicycle, that mile's awfully hard. That's a long distance now, right? So when you start thinking about this, it's how do we break the system down? How do we truly understand how in that case, the food delivery system impacts the different type of people who are engaging with, and then how do we optimize the experience for each one of those individuals? So in every case, we're not going to change the compounding pharmacy. There's still a compounding pharmacy. We're not going to change the food pantry. There's still a food pantry. We're going to help them do what they do better, or at least illuminate the process to help them do what they do better.
Okay. That's great explanation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we talked a little bit, you're a recovering engineer like me. So what possessed you to start your own business?
Mark, I've wanted to own a business since I was a little kid. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, right? I mean, I was 6 years old and I didn't understand why we couldn't just go buy IBM. It is a true story. I was having a conversation with my dad. Anyway, I now know why we can't buy IBM. So I now understand that. But I've known since I was a little kid. And for me, there is this idea as I got older and I started to sort of figure out, yes, I'm going to own a business. And what is that business going to be? I've always been fascinated by this intersection of what's working and what do people want to have happen, because you can have a system that is functionally working and meeting all of the engineering specs, right, which you and I are so accustomed to, and the end consumer still hates it or it doesn't meet their needs. And that intersection between engineering specifications and human interaction and human opinion, I became fascinated with that very, very early in my career. And I said, that's where I want to be. And if you think about so much of what we do, we talk about engineering precision to social problems, right? And that's really how we view it, is everybody has an opinion that's true and valid and real and is important. And there are engineering specs of this system. Even if they're not designed by an engineer, there's still a system going on, even if it's informal. And those two things collide very much in the real world. And sometimes they collide in a very catastrophic way, and sometimes they collide in a way that sort of creates alignment. And that's what we're trying to do, is create that alignment or help our clients create that alignment. So it's that intersection that got me excited.
Oh, that's awesome. So what's your role in the company now?
Yeah, so mostly my role, I tell people if you're founder and owner, you kind of have three roles. So obviously we manage a lot of projects. I've got a great team behind me and they're amazing. They're broken down in areas like data collection or analysis and report writing, et cetera. I tend to be involved on that side in terms of design and reporting out, the reports delivery. So you get into a lot of like design and setup and then just sort of overall project management. So part of it is just like the de facto delivering results to clients. That's obviously a huge part of what we do. But again, as any business owner, you've also got the helping my team grow, knocking down obstacles. We're focusing a whole lot right now on professional development, making sure that my team not only keeps up with what's going on, but that they are able to meet all of their individual and sort of personal goals, right? So that's a big part of what we're trying to bring up. And I always say this too, if you're a business owner, there's just a perfunctory, not very glamorous component of business ownership that you just have to be honest about. We're recording this in February. Well, most people's health insurance just renewed for their company. Somebody had to be the point person on that, as well as your BOP policy, your E&O policy, your EAP, all of those things. There's got to be a point person on that. And those things are important and they matter, but they don't pay the bills. That's a part of owning a company too. So those three things are really how my time is devoted. And in a really good world, I devote it mostly to my team and my clients.
Okay. So what makes you stand out from your competitors? So what's unique about you and how you deliver your services that gets your clients coming back to you and referring new clients versus your competitors?
So one of the things that I don't know if I mentioned this, and I think it may be on our website, but in addition to owning this company, I also teach research methods at University of Louisville in their MSBA program, their Master of Business Analytics program. And one of the things that's sort of the cornerstone of IQS research, I think it's also much of the way I tend to think about things as well. Answer your question is research is one of these professions. There are 1,000 details They're all important. You get them 85% right and your project fails. You can't operate at that 85% level, and you've got to understand all of those individual details. And I would say that's sort of the differentiating factor with IQS Research is we spend so much time sweating these individual details, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. I mean, the way you set up an incentive, as an example, for a doctor, right? The way you sort of compensate a doctor for answering a survey is fundamentally similar, but very, very different than the way you incentivize somebody who's experiencing houselessness, right? And there's an ethical component of that, because probably somebody who is experiencing houselessness will just talk to you if you're respectful to them. And yet this is a population that money, that gift card to a Subway or whatever, means so much more than the $20 gift card that you're giving the doctor to Amazon, right? So how do you handle that? How do you navigate that in a very meaningful and ethical way? IQS Research, we spend a ton of our time steeped in those details because they're so important. We never forget them.
Okay, that's awesome. What's one thing you wish more people knew about your business?
I would say probably this concept of everything you do creates a trade-off, right? And when you think about this, so I had a client one time, we were doing a study for him, we were doing a client study, and one of the scores came back, and I think it was like an 82% for professionalism, which wasn't a bad score. This was sort of a specialty construction company, and I thought it was a pretty good score. So when I presented that to him, I said, hey, here it is, blah, 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 this is that, this number is 82, all those scores are pretty good, da, da, da. And I started to go on, and the owner goes, no, 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 hold on, Shawn, stop, back up, back up. And I'm like, what did I miss? And he goes, I don't agree with your interpretation of that 82. He goes, we are a specialty company, but every project we do is over $1 million. And everybody with whom our clients are going to interact is a degreed professional, usually another engineer. He goes, I don't think that 82% is a good enough number. I think we need to be in the 90s. So that nuance, that trade-off, right? In my mind, the 82% was a pretty good score. In his mind, that 82% was a bad score. Understanding that and being able to reframe that, and a good research practitioner is pretty good at code switching around the numbers. Okay, well, let me tell you why 82 can be good. Let me tell you why 82 can be bad. And that makes meaningful differences when a client is trying to set their strategy, right? So understanding that it's not just looking at the numbers, but it's understanding how to apply those numbers. Good research practitioners can do that. And I think that's often misunderstood by our client base.
All right, excellent. So let me switch over to marketing. How do you market your company? Where are you getting your clients from?
Yeah. So, again, obviously after 25 years, it's a ton of repeat clients, right? You can do the basic sort of pieces, networking is big. We try and take advantage every time we do large public presentations of our data. Of course, so often what we do is proprietary and it's, bound by a confidentiality agreement, et cetera, et cetera. But when it's not, we try and tell the whole world. We want everybody to know about it. So that's obviously a big piece that we do. And I'll tell you this, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but one of the best things that anybody can do for their marketing is just do freaking outstanding work. Be memorable with your clients. And I don't mean that in some arrogant sense, right? We're human, we make mistakes, don't get me wrong. But the number of times that we've had somebody who calls us up and says, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we worked together when we were over at this, we did this project at this company. Well, now I'm over here and we've got this other thing again. And either you did really great work that helped us, or here's the other one that I think often gets forgotten. I had people call us up and they said, we had a small project and you were just really kind to us. You just treated us like we were important, even though we knew the project wasn't very big. And now I've got a project that's big and I want to talk to you again. So one of the best things I think that people can do is be kind as much as that is applicable. And it's not always easy in an honest conversation. And just try to do the best work you possibly can to be memorable. And people will remember you and they'll keep coming back. And that matters.
Yeah, people are so connected. And you never knew who that small company with the small project might be connected to.
Mm-hmm. Or the next job that the person's going to have who did a small project at this company and now they go to a bigger company and they're in a similar role, but now they've got a bigger budget. You're right. You just don't know.
Yeah. So sounds like customer service is a really big part of your marketing game, and that's appropriate and should be. So I like that.
Absolutely. And again, our clients are spending a lot of money, so they should feel good. The research should absolutely be effective. They should absolutely feel confident and comfortable that we're going to take it. We're going to work behind the scenes and do all the stuff they don't even know about. We're going to be sweating the details. They don't have to know the details. It's our job to know the details, and they need to trust us. And it's our job to convey that trust. We're going to sweat those details. We're going to get it done. We're going to be working on their behalf, even if we're not right in front of them. So they need to know that. That's our job. And I think that's a reasonable expectation for a client to have. For the type of money they spend, that's a reasonable expectation for them to have.
Okay. So looking at your journey as a business owner, what's a memorable roadblock or hurdle that you were challenged with that you're willing to share and that you had to overcome?
That is a tough one. And I think it's tough to name just a couple, but I will throw out a couple to sort of think about. Because remember, the company started in 99, right? So April 6th of 99 was Founders Day. So what's happened since 99? Well, the internet was kind of a big thing. It was dial-up AOL literally in the first office. But, so you've got the dot-com bubble, you've got 9/11, right? You've got the 2008 recession. Let's not forget COVID. But I'll tell you one thing, going all the way back early, we're talking when the company was pretty young. We had a lot of our eggs in one basket. And I remember after 9/11, so of course that was in September. And so I had a number of projects, number of contracts with one major corporation. It was a Fortune 50 corporation. Most of these were within 2 or 3 different engineering teams. And I remember one person, I won't mention her name, one person was over about $250,000 in contracts. And the contracts were set just as they were. Again, you're familiar with this in the automotive industry. They automatically terminate December 31st at midnight, and they automatically renew January 1 at 12:01, right? So just a standard term contract, no big deal. We have been doing these, the whole time since I'd started the company, so I got pretty used to it. And I was used to it on the company side when I was at Ford Motor Company, right? So we have this conversation, I don't know, maybe a week before Thanksgiving, and she says, "Hey, Shawn, we've got these contracts. I can't renew any of them." And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "Look, after 9/11, that basically shut automotive sales. It's like turning off a spigot." She goes, again, who's out shopping on Wednesday, September 12th, right? Not for cars. It just wasn't happening, right? Just for obvious reasons. So literally, Mark, that phone call at a point when we were a couple of years into business, $250,000 in contracts were severed as of 12/31. I think I started the next year with maybe a $50,000 contract for like year 3 of our business. As a young business owner, as a new person, I mean, I don't know that the heart hit my throat as much as it ever did that day. And it just teaches you, a lot of lessons. It teaches you that you can't take anything for granted. It teaches you that you can work really, really hard and things still not work well. It teaches you that at all points you should be financially conservative, or at least that's the position I take. It teaches you that you have to think for the long haul and you have to overcome obstacles that are facing you right in the moment. And if you're really good and, let's be blunt, really lucky, then you end up surviving and you end up being here 25 years afterwards. But that was a real moment. I mean, even as I'm telling you the story, I'm not lying. As I'm telling you the story, I can feel the emotion right here because it was real. I still remember that phone call. And I'll probably tell that story, Mark, on the day that I retire. It was that meaningful. It didn't feel good at the time, but I sure as heck learned a lot. And it definitely changed the approach that I took to the company, making sure that I had a good balance between being aggressive, but also being financially conservative, because things like that will happen. It's just life. Nobody predicted COVID, right? So when we're all sitting here in February, life was all fine and dandy. And then look what happened, right? You need to position your companies in the absolute best way to survive those things, because you can't predict them. They're going to hit. And sometimes they hit really hard. And you just want to be in the best position at all times to make sure that you can ride those things out. So that was one example. But I'll say this too, not the only one.
Yeah. You've been in business 25 years. There's been more than one. So you mentioned COVID, though. So how did you lead your team through COVID? Because that was a challenge to every business leader out there.
I'm going to be blunt. It was, man, I don't know that I've ever felt so much like I was knocked back on my heels for so long. We just, all of us as a society and as a community, we're figuring out our families, we're figuring out, our businesses, we're figuring out everything. And I remember literally watching every meeting on my calendar get moved. If a contract wasn't signed, it got delayed, right? And so dealing with that again, as so many others did, my team, of course, we're going home. People are boxing up their desktops and taking those home and working remotely. We're figuring those things out. We're going, okay, so we usually have a Monday morning team meeting. Then we said, we're going to do a Monday meeting. We're going to do a Wednesday after lunch. And we're going to do a Friday at 4 o'clock, just because we got to figure out some way to keep some form of company culture going on. And it was just a day by day. But I do remember this. It was probably somewhere around, I'm going to say, the end of March or the beginning of April. And I just felt like I didn't have anything else to say to the team that was meaningful or inspirational. And I said, look, guys, I'm just going to level with you. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I have no idea what it's going to be. At that point, I was 49 years old. I said, but here's what I know. I know our clients hire us to do really good research. If we don't know how to do anything else in this new world that we're living in, we still know how to do good research. For the moment, let's go all in on that bet, because we know how to do that. And that has been successful in the past. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff out here that we don't have figured out yet. And no matter what conclusion we come up with, 3 minutes later, that conclusion's out of date. But I think doing good work is going to stay true no matter what happens on the back end. And for right now, and I swear it was one, I'm not going to use a sports metaphor, but whatever a Hail Mary pass is, it was that. I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but it seems like the most logical thing, and we know how to do that. Let's just nose to the grindstone, do everything we can. And if we're all out of business in 6 months, at least we can hold our heads up high. And again, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant or anything else, but that was literally an act of desperation. But at that moment, it was the only thing. I'm like, I know we know how to do this. And so many other things are coming so fast from every direction. I have no idea how those things are going to settle out. And I just can't even react to them fast enough, much less give you, my team, good guidance. So let's just do the one thing that we know how to do, and we'll figure everything else out next. And that's just what we did. And that wasn't what got us through, but to some degree, it helped keep us focused, because, you're looking at webinars and PPP loans and what's open and what's not open and what's the governor going to do and how many people can get together and And it's like, it was changing all the time. I'm like, I can't even deal with this right now, but I can write this memo. I can change this chapter of the report. I can make sure that these data we're collecting, at that time, one of the projects we were doing was a really big project on job growth, right? So it's like, and the client goes, is this even going to mean anything? And I'm like, I have no idea. So we went back and we said, how can we determine if research on job growth is going to be meaningful? At the time, we treated it as a recession. So we went back to the '08 recession. Well, there's a ton of data that looked at the predictions before and after the '08 recession to see what panned out well and what didn't. I said, well, let's start there. Let's keep doing what we're doing and let's start there. So we said we knew that our clients would want that, but it also gave us a way internally not to get distracted with every little thing that was coming down the pike at a point in life where, my gosh, there were like so many things coming down the pike that could just distract you. I could, as an owner, and I know you too, you could spend all day in webinars just trying to figure out like what the latest law changes were. Yeah. Well, at some point, one more webinar about the law just wasn't going to be helpful. At some point, you just got to put the line in the sand and go, I've learned as much as I can learn today. Let's go do something else. And what's the something? And the something is just, let's just do good research, because that's like the one thing that we know how to do.
Right. Great. So obviously you had to change your leadership style during COVID. Looking back over your 25 years, how has your leadership style and approach changed over the years?
Coming out of the automotive industry, I was probably much more command and control in the beginning. This is what it's going to be, and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to get there, and we're going to charge the hill, follow me, let's go. And that has a lot of downsides to it. It really does. As you get older, ego becomes less important. And if we're honest with ourselves, ego plays into that to some degree too. And I would say the way we describe our culture right now, and I try and align my management style to the culture, is we're very highly collaborative. So I try to be very mindful of what does my team need? What do the people on my team need, both professionally and also to some degree personally, right? And you don't want to like step into their personal lives, but it matters if they have a cat or if they have this hobby or that hobby, or if they do whatever, it changes the dialogue when they come in the morning. So I try to lean into that space and be very intentional about where I am in that space, just helping them get ahead in the world, definitely professionally, but however that looks, with also at the same time without overstepping a bound. And that was never where I was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, I was probably nice and friendly, but probably not as intentional and probably not as caring about that. And that's definitely something that I've been very deliberate about, I'd say, for the last 3, 4, 5 years.
So you've talked about your team a bunch. You're obviously really proud of them. So tell us a little bit about your team. What's the size? How are you organized?
Yeah, so the way the team is set up is they're broken into specific functions of the research process. So the core team is the core full-time, always here. It's 5 individuals. What's interesting is because of the nature of our work, we always have what are called field teams. So field teams could be people who are out doing interviews at distilleries. Maybe they're interviewing refugees. Maybe they're at community centers. Maybe they're at homeless shelters. Maybe they're whatever. You put those people into the mix, which are a very important part of the mix, that brings us up to about 15 or 20 individuals. So the team has a very dynamic sort of fluid look, but everybody's very specialized at what they do. So the field team is, again, working on specific projects at specific times, interviewing specific individuals. And maybe they're hired because of their language skills or their community connection or whatever it happens to be. The core team, you're talking about people who are steeped in statistics, political science. We've got people with a social work background. We've got people with a communications background, and they're allocated to specific functions within the research process. So they get to get really good at what they do. So it's a combination of their skills, their interpretation built on top of or overlaying on top of the IQS research systems is how we try and put it all together.
All right. Awesome. So we've covered a lot today. For everybody who's been watching this, I encourage you to make sure you pick up, there's always the obvious things, and then there's the subtle learnings that you can learn. So watch this a couple times. Last few questions. These are just kind of quick, rapid fire, and kind of top of your head answers. First one is, what is one of your keys to success in business?
One of the keys to success in business is you have to have a life outside of business. You have to have hobbies. You have to be able to turn it off. I absolutely believe that.
Okay. What's one piece of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, business owners?
You wear a lot of hats, but only one of those hats pays the bills. Make sure you're really good at that hat. When you're wearing it, make sure you're doing really good, because that's the only one that pays the bills. But you got to be a little bit good at all of them.
Okay, great. What's a book you've recently read or listened to or podcast that you would recommend to other business owners?
There's lots of them, obviously. Thinking Fast and Slow is a seminal book around psychology and how we make decisions, predictably irrational. All of those are really great. One I just started recently is called, I just love the title, Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me. And it's about cognitive dissonance. And I picked it up because of the title, but I'm learning a lot as I'm getting into the book as well. But I just love the title of that one.
So The Perfectly Irrational, is that a Daniel Pink?
Dan Ariely wrote Predictably Irrational.
Okay.
And all of those, predictably irrational, thinking fast and slow, nudge, that all plays in the space of behavioral economics, which is a hugely important part for everybody, but certainly in the research space, it's important.
Right. Okay. So if I had a magic wand, and by the way, I don't, but we're going to pretend I do. So if I had a magic wand, I could wave it over one part of your business. Where would you want me to wave it to improve it immediately tomorrow?
Oh my gosh. Well, if you could just improve it tomorrow, I would love to have a wonderful director in here that could offload some of the management, leadership, project management components. So if you find that magic wand, I don't know, maybe it's in your desk somewhere. That would be the one that would make me truly happy.
Okay. All right. Great. Now I've got one last question for you, and that is this. What inspires you most right now?
Man, I tell you what, this is like a cool time to be alive. I mean, artificial intelligence is really awesome. It's going to make the world a different place. I don't think we need to be as threatened by it as a lot of people are. Like everything else, when it comes on the scene, it's overly hyped, but it'll settle out and it'll be really transformative. The other thing I think is really cool is there is so much analytics talent being developed in the Louisville area right now. I mean, again, the MSBA program, we've got different types of programs that aren't at the master's level. You've got analytics that are being infused into undergrad courses. There's just some amazing, amazing stuff that's being done, and really a group of very, very smart human beings that are being very well trained. And I just love the potential of what that's going to do to the business community over the next 5 years to a decade. I don't think we know yet, but when we talk about running data-driven businesses, I think we are really just scratching the surface. And I'm just getting super excited about that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, the fear of AI is overblown.
Yes.
And it's just the next technology.
It's the next
right?
evolution.
And
yeah.
there will certainly be people who abuse it and misuse it.
Yep.
But that's no different than every other technology that's ever come and play, right? There are
Absolutely.
always the people that are going to abuse it,
Mhm.
but the number of possible uses for it that the average person who sees it as a way to cheat on a term paper or something,
Right.
it's just so much more than that.
It's so much more. And if you think about these things, in the research space, and I talk to my team and I'm like, where do we add value? There's some basic calculations. We ran just sort of a back and napkin set of math one time and said for a mid-sized study, there are 10,000 individual calculations that go into that report. If it takes us 10 hours to do those 10,000 calculations or 10 minutes to run those 10,000 calculations, they still get the same number of calculations. But if we've got all this budget and we can get those basic calculations done in 10 minutes, then we can take all the rest of that time and really add value to that analysis, right? That's where we can really make a difference in our world. And there's an analogous version for everybody else, right? Where do you add value in your business? Use AI to offload all the other stuff to get you to that point, and then you add your mark on top of it. It shouldn't threaten us. I mean, this is just a way to optimize the great stuff that we do.
Yeah. It's just a tool to help us be more efficient. And the good news is, the internet's made terabytes of data available
Yes,
that we can't figure out how to process on our own. And
absolutely.
AI can do a lot of that processing for us.
And then on the back end, it processes it, spits it out. It doesn't tell you what it means, but guess what? That's what we do. That's what we do
Right.
as human beings. So let it do all that processing, kick it out, and we go, huh? I didn't know that. I didn't know those two things were related. That makes sense. You know what? Now that I know that, then you get to that next conversation, and that's where the magic happens.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Shawn. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Shawn Herbig, president, founder of IQS Research. He's shared a ton with us. Shawn, it has been great learning about your business
Thank
and
you.
about really what IQS Research is all about, and what the research field in general really does for businesses above and beyond just what so many of us perceive of as just generic market research, and just the depth of value in there and the data that's out there and what you can do with it. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Hey, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation very much today. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening in. Again, be sure to subscribe to our channel so that you see all of our conversations. And we will see you again soon when we drop our next conversation. Bye.